The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below.
Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor Thomas Goss, with some insights into the process of getting your works performed by a live orchestra.
How do you get performed by a live orchestra? It's the #1 question confronting aspiring orchestral composers. Therefore, it's fitting that I answer it here in the penultimate chapter of this 10-part video series. All the information from the previous chapters should put the answers I'm about to give you into the context of the craft, the resources, the training, and the process needed to develop professionally. But I should stress that all of this advice only works if you put it to work, and even at that, only if you shape it to your personal circumstances, contacts, and artistic vision. So let's dissect the problem with certain general principles, with a few shortcuts around some common illusions.
First, the problem. You're a developing composer. Maybe you're working logically toward a career in music with plans to attend a university or a conservatory, or you're already there, or perhaps even graduated. Then again, perhaps all you've got is a closet full of equipment and a head full of ideas. Whatever your situation, you've probably dedicated a huge amount of time and passion to developing your music. And yet you may feel that getting performed by an orchestra is just as big a mystery as when you started.
What stands between you and that goal? Well, the first and most obvious obstruction is your own lack of knowledge and willpower. Do you know all of the orchestras in your area? Have you attended their performances, gotten a feel for their strengths, and met any of the people involved? Are you in contact with other local composers, artists, musicians, and art supporters? Unless you do at least that, you won't even know who makes the decisions about whether anyone local gets performed, let alone you. And that is the second roadblock, gatekeeping. The pathway of a score from an unknown composer's hands to the stage has to cross a lot of ground. There has to be some overriding need for a score like yours, or the orchestra will simply play more classic hits. Furthermore, people have to have the time to deal with your request to be seen and heard, and they often have zero time, even with the best intentions. Budgets are tight for any kind of performance, let alone new music. This is what's led to the castle wall scenario, with thousands of composers clamoring outside a protected fortress of music, which requires some sort of assault in order for a new score to make it to the stage.
Have you ever noticed that a lot of great novels start in the middle of the story? They cut straight to the interesting part, and then fill in the missing details as they go. We're so used to that kind of narrative that sometimes we think our lives need to be that way too. And that's the biggest part of the problem with the castle walls scenario. All those composers stuck outside are there because they're in the wrong part of their own stories. Of course it's a wall, but the wall is there because it's a part of your story, not the orchestra's.
Do you really want that wall to go away? Then you've got to apply GOSS'S law, which is, the skill and notoriety of the composer largely dictates the level of the available performers. Where are your levels of skill and notoriety?
Be honest with yourself. Brutally so. If you're an amateur composer or a student composer, then the orchestra which is most likely to perform your work will be an amateur or student orchestra. And let me stress, there's no shame in that.
One of the most sacred privileges of an artist's development is the right to learn from your mistakes. And there's far more safety to make them when there's less at stake. People will be more generous with their time when they feel that you're one of their own. Furthermore, you can learn from their mistakes as well, and very clearly see the problems of technique and expression that face the orchestral performer. If you're smart, then you'll remember that these challenges may be a constant concern for some musicians, who'll work their whole careers on keeping them under control.
The least you can do is apply the same diligence to your own development, and not get an attitude about how much greater you are than them. Because one thing the world of concert music does not need right now is another jerk.
There are different levels of being a student composer. One of the reasons why university and conservatory studies are so useful is that they have the opportunity for orchestral performance built right into them, along with teachers who will guide the student's progress toward that point. Of course, the orchestra that will perform it will be composed of students as well, who are striving just as much as you are to attain a professional level with their music. So you have to respect that effort and match it with ingenuity and honest passion, not a bunch of musical sarcasm strung together, and certainly not something trivial or damaging to those players.
So many university composition students write pieces that are essentially unusable for their careers, and are nothing any conductor or film director might want to listen to after they graduate. Basically, this is the equivalent of flushing an opportunity for an orchestral demo session right down the toilet. So be smart, and compose something from the heart, no matter how full your head is with clever ideas.
Universities and conservatories aren't just institutions of higher learning. They're also places where future professionals make connections through friendships and mutual interests. These connections can last a lifetime and lead to future collaborations that build a career. Case in point, you're far more likely to have your works performed by these peers than by musicians and conductors of a different generation, at least at first. But if you're a DIY composer who's built their own education from books, personal contacts, private lessons, and internet resources like this one, then the burden is still on you to develop artistic connections such as those that university students get handed to them. You'll have to collaborate with artists, playwrights, and dancers, work with solo and chamber musicians, and record and promote your own music in a way that creates a portfolio of activities.
That is the key. If you want to get to the middle of the story, then you have to take care of the part that says once upon a time first. You have to populate your story with characters and the beginnings of a plot line. Then you have to make things happen for yourself. You have to come from somewhere. Nobody puts a piece of music up on stage by someone without something of their own.
Let's go back to that illusion of the castle walls. What are the gatekeepers really protecting? It's not the access to the performers so much. It's really the audience that's being protected, and rightfully so. The orchestra's connection to their audience is a relationship that may have been built over the course of centuries. It doesn't need you to wreck it with a piece of music that doesn't add to the conversation. But here's the Achilles heel of that gatekeeping. There's nothing stopping you from access to that audience too. You can band together with like-minded composers and musicians, put on your own events, release your own music, and be part of your own scene. Nothing is stopping you but your own lack of connections, resources, and free time, which you can develop if you really care about your career. And guess what? Living composers who are getting performed the most nowadays have that going on for themselves. They do things that reach out to a community of followers that they themselves developed.
And that, more than anything else, puts you right in the middle of the story. People will know who you are, or if they don't, then your calling card will be truly impressive.
You will have the confidence as a developing professional to connect what you're doing with semi-pro and regional orchestras. And as your career grows, so will the necessary contacts that associate you with greater opportunities. But be warned, there's still no guarantee your works will get performed, even by your top peers, as it were. Orchestras have ever tighter budgets these days, with those at the top often making the most conservative decisions. If you find a surefire method of getting your music played by top orchestras all the time, then tell the rest of us composers, because we'd sure like to know. After my own long career as a composer, the only way I know how to keep performances coming is to prove myself through the quality and usefulness of my works. Many of my clients have sought me out after hearing my work or finding out what I can offer them as a professional composer and orchestrator. But I got to this level of activity one step at a time. I did a huge amount of community building before orchestras started performing my works, and when they did, it was because the music I offered was indispensable to their needs as performers. It took decades of developing the right instincts and learning from myself where my strengths were. And it should take that long to develop a career that's based on the highest level of achievement and involvement to which you can attain in concert music.
All the same, you should be looking for ways to subvert GOSS'S law that strengthen your career and keep you connected to many different communities.
It may surprise you to know that many established composers cross the lines backward, often working with student ensembles and community orchestras. It's great to involve yourself with people who are literally making music for the love of it, or are starting out on the path toward a career. They will treasure the memory of working with you if you make the experience unforgettable for them. The scores that you provide for them may well spread to other such groups and help get your name out there as someone who strongly supports musical outreach. If your collaboration also helps developing composers, then so much the better. It's really your duty as a more experienced composer to pay it forward. Then there's the reverse, crossing the lines forward. This is everyone's dream, of course, starting in the middle of the story, as I mentioned before, leaving out the whole need to build a community or pay one's dues. The most common strategy is to win an award or a contest, to get discovered, or have some bit of notoriety attached to your name. If it happens to you, great, I'm happy for you. I myself haven't won a single award in my entire career for anything, and I'm still working. I know many award winners who gave up long ago. What's more, a lot of contests are just fundraisers for the organizations that hold them, almost like lotteries. As to getting discovered, that rarely pays off unless the person being discovered has something of a community already. Of course, you could submit your scores to reading sessions, attend workshops and symposiums, and take advantage of many other opportunities in which professionals rub elbows. You might also get a leg up here, but honestly, such interaction is just one of many ways you should be reaching out. Imagine taking a score to a reading session, impressing a conductor, getting performed and even recorded, and then having no community of your own to come back to at the end of it. I've seen this far too often. The big moment goes nowhere, because it's so far ahead of anything the composer has going on. So professional interaction has to build into your own activities, and not be the only thing you're doing.
I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of this complex topic, so I'll close with a bit of practical advice, a checklist of things you can do right after you finish watching this video that will vastly increase your chances of getting performed by a live orchestra.
First, be as good at your craft as you can possibly be. Have confidence that any score you may give to musicians someday is playable and well orchestrated, not to mention fascinating, exciting, deep, and so on. Make it easy on yourself by scoring shorter works instead of pieces that take years to compose and hours to perform. Second, get involved with live music on the ground. If you're still in public school, join your school orchestra, or join your region's youth orchestra, or even form an orchestra if there isn't one. Offer to arrange music or compose something with yourself as the soloist. Attend concerts as much as you can. Solo recitals, chamber music, symphonic concerts, ballet, and opera. Hang around after shows, talk to people, and find friends and allies that you can collaborate with. Third, don't send a score to anyone unless they agree to look at it. And even then, don't hold your breath. I've actually never had a conductor play a single score I sent to them this way. That hasn't worked for me. What's worked far better is when I came up with a compelling idea for a performance that involved reaching out to different audiences. I talked that over with prospective ensembles, including orchestras, and then I scored something new that was commissioned. That takes us to my fourth bit of advice. Compose for a specific ensemble and event, not for a contest and not on spec. A score should never be just about notes from somebody's head, full stop. It should also reflect the confidence and encouragement of a group of musicians, and the support of the conductor. And it should usually be a piece that can be performed by other ensembles if you want it to have legs. Fifth, document what you do. Make a record of your performances, and get permission to record your musicians. Share those moments on SoundCloud or YouTube, and connect them to your community. Create a presence on the internet through social media. And it doesn't have to be all orchestral music. Alongside my big scores, I've often composed for smaller ensembles and soloists. When I was starting out, it actually helped me enormously to make important contacts through chamber concerts. And it's still huge fun at this point in my career, and still useful in keeping a presence in my community and staying connected to great performers.
What all this builds is credibility. Through doing all of this and many more things you'll think up on the spur of the moment, you'll get a reputation for composing things that audiences need to hear and musicians need to play. It's going to take years, so learn to enjoy that journey instead of resenting it. In fact, I hope it does take a long time, and I hope that during that time everybody watching this video does their part to make new music more important in the lives of everyone they meet. I'll cover that last topic in the very last chapter of the Intro to Orchestration series, Change the World. See you then.